Hello and welcome. Today we are going to look at lists in Python. I've already opened the Jupyter interface. Now let's go ahead and create a new Jupyter notebook, Python 3, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this as P4 for video 4 lists. Okay, now lists in Python are represented in square brackets and they can be written as 1, 2, 3. So this is a list. Now the length of this list is 3 because there are 3 elements in the list, and it's important to remember that in Python list always begins at index 0 and not at index 1. So here this particular 1 is at index 0. So when we try to print index 0, we get 1. And similarly, if we try to print index 2, we get 3 because we start with 0, 1 and then 2. So at index 2 we have 3. Moreover, there are negative indices. So if you say x minus 1, that returns the last rightmost element from the list. In this case, that element is 3. Okay. Now let's look at slicing in lists. I'm going to create another list with, let's say, 12, 34, 34, 23, 12, 12, 56, 89, 12, something like that. Okay, that's our list. Now if we want to pull elements from 34 to 12, which is highlighted here, 34 is at index number 1 because 12 is at this is a 0, 1, and then this 12 is at index number 1, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we need 1, and then on the right hand side we have to give that index plus 1. So we have to give 4, and that way now we can get this entire index elements from that section from that list. Similarly, if we want to pull all elements to the right hand side of 23, including 23, so to do that we need the index for 23, which is 0, 1, 2 and then colon. So after colon we don't have to type any number. That tells Python to bring everything from that list from 2 index onwards. So we have 23 up to 12. Similarly, we can look at indexes on the left side. So let's say if you want all the indexes from 67 on the left hand side, to do that we need the index for 67, and that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we want to add one more index, 5, because on the right hand side it always takes one less. So now we have all the elements including 67 to the left hand side. Similarly, we can use a negative index in this case. So if we use negative index, the lastmost right hand side element is removed from that particular list. If we do -1. Now if you are wondering what happens if we do not add any numbers on either side of the colon, well, if you do that, it returns the entire list as is, as you can see here. Okay, now let's look at some of the arithmetic operators that are really helpful in working with lists. So let's create a simple list with 1, 2, 1, 3 and 4. Okay, and now, sorry, this is to be x. Okay, now if you want to sum these, so we can say sum x, and that gives the sum. We can look at the minimum value from the list, which is 1, we can look at the maximum value from the list, which is 4 in this case. Now a list can also have blanks or nuns. So if that happens, so let's say in here we have none. In this case, if we use all x, we get false, and that's because it detects that particular none, and therefore it says that all elements in the list are not without blanks. So alternatively, if there is a function called any, that will return true in that case. Now if you run all and any without the none, both of them will work and they'll give true as the output. Okay, now let's look at some of the looping for loops that we can use with lists, and these are really helpful because list is a iterable object in Python, and what looping does is we can change each of the elements inside the list. We can modify them or we can add them in sequence, and that becomes really powerful when you are working with large amounts of data where you have to pull subsets of those data, modify them, put them back in that list or another list. So let's create a list 1 2 3. Now we can try printing it. Now the syntax for loop is like this. We write for space iterator, let's put I in x and print I. This I can be any string, it can be any text, doesn't matter. And when you print this, you get 1 2 3 and 4. Now if we want to square the items in the list, so let's say if we want to square all these items and put them in a new list called y, for that we have to create an empty list, and the way you can create an empty list is by using 2 square brackets without anything inside. And now we can go ahead and write a for loop. So for I in x y dot append I square. Okay, so in this case, if you have noticed, we have put a colon, but after that there are no curly braces or open or close braces to tell Python that this is a beginning and ending of the for loop. The way Python knows that is by this indentation on the left hand side. And so it's important that in a multi-line code, even within a function, they have to be indented correctly, otherwise it will throw an error. Now when we run this, we get a new list for y, which is 1 4 and 9. Now we can also get index number along with the element from the list. So let's create another list which is made up of strings, let's say 1 2 and 3. And now if we want to print each of these along with their indices, we can do that. So if you say for index I in x, so instead of in x, we have to write enumerate x and print index number. So in this case, index number is going to be integer, so that's why we have %d, and then we have %s because the actual values in the list are strings. And here we are going to put index and I, and that returns index 0 we have 1, index 1 we have 2, index 2 we have 3. So These are the ways for loops work. Now moving a step further, in lists we can use loops in form of list comprehension. That's a shortcut way of writing a for loop, and it becomes really handy in when you're writing big codes, because it's much compact and easy to read as well. So to write list comprehension, we can use the square example again. So let's say if this is 1, 2 and 3, and we want to create a new list which is square of all the elements within X, then we say this is how you write it: for I in X, then come back here and then say do this, and when you run this you get 1, 4 and 9. A step further in the same thing, if we can add a condition. So here you can also say if I is less than 3, what this will do is it will pick only 1 and 2 because they are smaller than 3, and ignore 3 from that X list, and then give you a new list which is just 1 and 4. So that was about list comprehension and looping. Now let's look at a few more functions that really kind of help in manipulating the lists, extracting data from the list, putting them on new list, and so on and so forth. So we have already looked at append. Let's say if we have a list 1, 2 and 3, and now if we want to add something to this list, we can add it like this, and it adds to the right hand side of that existing list. We can also add, instead of adding an element, we can add a new list to the existing list. So let's say if we say x dot extend, and here if we give another list, what this does is it will add this list to the existing list to list. Apart from this, there is a function called insert, and insert also is helpful. So it can go ahead and add a string at a given index. So here, as you can see, at index number 2 we have added the string ABC, and it keeps all other elements as is. Now this is really important to note. It did not replace anything, it added a new element to the list. And instead of this, if we had done x2 and then said add 999, what that will do is it will replace existing element from the list. So the insert is really helpful in that way. Now there are two functions that are useful to remove elements from the list. One is remove and other is pop. So the first one, let's try this one. So our list is right here, and if you say x dot remove, and if we want to remove 1000 from that list, then we can just type 1000, and as you can see, we removed 1000 element from that list. The other way to do that is by giving it an index number, and to do that we can say x dot pop, and here we can give it an index number and it will remove. So in this case we removed 999, which is at index number 2, from that particular list. Okay, now moving on to the next function. If we say x dot sort, what this does is it will sort the entire list in ascending order. So we have 0 1 and sorry we have 1 2 3, and then so 1 1 2 2 3 3. Similarly, there is another function called reverse, and you have probably guessed what this function will do. Reverse, and this flips the list that was already existing. Then there are a few more items. There is a copy item. So if we have a list and if you want to make a copy of that list, you can do this. Now Y has the same elements from that list and it's a copy of that list. So if you do anything to Y, it's not going to affect anything in X. Okay, there's one last item that I want to show is count. So let's create a list which is 1 1 2 1 1 let's say 5. Now if you say x.count 1, it will return number of times that particular element is repeating in that list. And here, as you can see, 1 is repeating 3 times. It's at index 0, then other is at index 1, and the last one is at index 0 1 2 3 4 at index 4. So this is really helpful as well. The last function is clear. So what this does, it removes everything from the list. And again, this is helpful if you are in a loop updating the list, and at some point you want to empty the list and restart adding new set of data in the same list for that variable. Then this function is really helpful to clean the list and you can start it again. Okay, that was it for lists. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to leave in comments or questions. I'll try to answer them. Thank you.